this is more for the adults, even though we have more kids here we've had in a while. But teenagers and adults, teenagers especially, because a lot of y'all probably haven't even seen this stuff before. But looking forward, I've said it before in here, in one of my lessons, there are three kinds of people. Those that see when they are shown, those that do not see. So with that in mind, when you were a kid, we're going to make this as interactive as possible. When you were a child, what did you want to be? Gary wanted to be a cowboy. What did you want to be? When you were a kid and you were playing outside, what were you? Who were you?
I wanted to be a swimmer.
A swimmer? She played on dry land even. That's dedication.
No, I played in the river in Indiana.
Yeah?
So I could swim clear across it when I was little.
What about you, James? What did you want to be when you were a kid? What did you play as?
Really, I don't know for sure. I wanted to be in a line of animals, taking care of animals and things, anything like
Yeah?
that.
It's probably like he was taking care of animals and stuff. Maybe a farmer, zookeeper, something like that. So everybody as a kid usually, they'll play as something or somebody they want to be when they're growing up. So why did you want to be a cowboy? Why did you want to be a swimmer? Why did you want to be with animals and all of that? It's because you wanted to be like other people or people you've seen and you thought it was really cool.
I want to be in the Olympics. It's what I really want to be.
Your heroes, right? So there's many types of different heroes and everything. A lot of people have different ones, but those are people, as an example, that you wanted to be like. So what is a hero?
Somebody you look up to.
Somebody you look up to, yeah, of course. What makes a hero from just a nice guy that you look up to? What separates the two? Why are there stories written about some people and not about others? Heroes. Well, the Greek word, heroes, spelled exactly the same. The word hero comes from the Greek heros, and it literally translates to protector or defender, particularly one with divine ancestry or later given divine honor. Somebody who's done something great and performed something great enough that even little kids, when they're playing outside using their imagination, pretend they're them or want to be something like them. So what makes a hero? That what we just explained. Greatness, right? Something that people look up to. So David and Goliath, for example. I know a lot of kids probably weren't pretending they were David unless they had a slingshot, which if you grew up in church and had a slingshot, you were David and Goliath a little bit. Well, what made David a hero in this story?
He's like slayed the giant.
But I'm sure other people killed giants back in those times. So why did David get the recognition?
Because of God.
Because he used God. But because even as a little kid, he did something nobody else was willing to do. He did something braver than the rest of the entire army to the point where they thought he was crazy. And he succeeded in that. Stood up against the odds to forever live in history. So now we'll go to another hero. King Leonidas of Sparta. Who's heard of him before? Who's seen 300? Well, this is what is believed to be a true story, although the movie's not at all. But King Leonidas of Sparta. What made him famous other than his quote that probably one of the most famous quotes of all time, Mon Abbey, which just means come and take them. And it now contributes to about 30% of bumper stickers in the world, I think. I see them every day, everywhere. So, King Leonidas of Sparta, the Persians invaded. Persians invaded all of Greece. This is a big invading force. And he was like, we need to go to war to stop these people. They're just going to keep coming. They're going to be right on us when it's too late, and they're going to kill everybody. Nobody wanted to listen. They wanted to keep having their parties and their festivals and everything. Some people just didn't believe him. So he took a few of his men. It wasn't 300. It was probably about 1,200. But 300 of his straight force, like the biggest force. And they met up with a lot of other people to make about 7,000 people altogether from text. And they faced an army that was about 70,000 to 300,000 Persians. Historians estimate it. Very, very different odds. So he goes to the battle of Thermopylae. Being such a small army, he has to choose the tactic or the place correctly. So he chose a spot between two mountains so that their numbers, they couldn't get around them. They had to attack them straight on. And he used his army, who were tougher, bigger, more disciplined. And they kept stopping the Persians, even though they were very outnumbering force. Then enters Ephialtes. So Leonidas and the Greeks kept the Persians back and killed about 10,000 of them. So took out a seventh of their force, or roughly seventh. And then on the seventh day, a Malian Greek trader named Ephialtes, he led the Persian general by the mountain to attack around the Greeks. So what this guy did, he went to the enemy, betrayed Spartan and the Greece that he was a part of, took them all the way around on a hidden path, thus flanking the Spartans, and eventually they couldn't do anything because that was their whole tactic, was to only fight from the front. And, you know, you had your other people who stayed with him, lived with him, died too. It wasn't just the Spartans, but that was what he was known for. So what happened after that? When the king died, when you kill a king in Greece, it's an automatic declaration of war. So now all of Greece went to war because of his death. He kind of sacrificed himself. He didn't go knowing he was going to beat the Persians and take the glory. He went saying, they're going to kill me, but then they'll wake up. Then they'll see that this is a real threat, and they will know I wasn't lying. So as a sacrifice, all of Greece went to war. And that lasted for about 50 years, even though the movie kind of makes it seem like it wasn't. But it went on for a while, but eventually the Persians were pushed back, let all the way out. What about Samson? Samson, well, we want to be strong like Samson. So he was a Nazarite, born from his mother, and at those times, they were at war with the Philistines. So this is early, they were more like the Canaan era. And Samson was a judge, and one day the army decided to attack or set up shop where they shouldn't. Samson goes out with a bone, a jawbone, and kills 1,000 of them. So they're kind of kept at bay, or kept in check by one dude, Samson. He keeps all of his people safe from that. But what happened to Samson, as we all know? He met Delilah, who was a Philistine girl, who was loyal to her people, tricked him with love, found out his weakness, shaved his head, and then what happened to Samson? He was betrayed, similar to King Leonidas. And so they put out his eyes, bound him with feathers. Then Samson took hold of the 2 middle pillars upon the house, because his hair started to grow back. And what happened then? Kind of went out with a bang, right? So he took them all out, and thus the Philistines were like, okay, well, we can't do anything anymore, let's just get out of these people. So even in his death, brought peace through it. So what about little Pavlik? Anybody heard of this story? Never heard of little Pavlik? So little Pavlik was your typical kid. He liked playing in the woods, shooting BB guns, playing with his friends and everything. Loved his country, was the Boy Scout of his time. One day, little Pavlik goes in to his father's house, and he sees that his father is storing a bunch of illegal food under his floorboards. So he's selling this grain to all the other people and making a illegal profit off of it. So little Pavlik, being the outstanding young citizen he was, went and told, or pondered on it. He's like, I just caught my dad doing something I know is illegal, but, you know, I'm very loyal to my country and my state. What does he do? He went and told on his dad for selling illegal grain to other villagers. So the state came, and they took little Pavlik's dad, the illegal grain seller, and they killed him. But that made all the villagers who were buying this grain really, really upset. So what did they do? They went and got little Pavlik, and they killed him for betraying his dad. But because of little Pavlik's brave sacrifice, when the state found out that his village had turned and killed him for selling out his parents, They went back to the village and killed everybody in the village. And that is the heroic story of little Pavlik. Not sure it was heroic? What's the difference between that story and Leonidas and Samson? Wasn't he doing the right thing? What? You're close. So the story of little Pavlik was actually not a true story. But it was little Pavlik Morozov. And he was the poster child story, the Boy Scout of Soviet Russia. He was the heroic story that they came and told in communism. Who cares if they're your family? Who cares if they're your friends? If they do something against the state, that's where your loyalty should lie. There are even still to this day monuments made of them, stories, museums, stamps even made of little Pavlik, even though they're not a communist country anymore. But the agenda of communism, and what just happened there a little bit, is you destroy a culture's heroes and gods, and then you get to replace them with a new type of hero, a little Pavlik hero. You get to make the heroes in your story, in your image. You get to say what's heroic and what's not. So for example, this is Ephialtes. So Ephialtes was born in Greece, and he never really fit in. His countrymen were always kind of mean to him because he was a little bit different. Ephialtes goes up to King Leonidas, and he says, I want to be part of you. But because he was different, Leonidas said no. So Ephialtes, just wanting what was best for his people, goes to another group of people who said they will accept you no matter who you are, no matter what you want to believe. We accept everybody here. All you have to do is show us how to defeat King Leonidas. So knowing that Leonidas was evil and not very open-minded, he led the Persians around to eventually kill all of the Spartan and Greece members that he had in his family. As King Leonidas was dying, he even admitted his fault and said, You, Ephialtes, may you live forever. What about another heroic story of Delilah? Delilah was born a Philistinian girl who was very loyal to her country and her countrymen. Her countrymen were being stopped left and right by an evil man with great power named Samson. Samson was going around and defeating these men left and right, killing them by the thousands. But Delilah, being loyal as she was, found a way to seduce the mighty Samson and cut off his power. But even still, at great sacrifice, the Philistines took down Mr. Samson. So that is more so of a manifesto of doctrine of a snitch society. You see how you can kind of make a hero out of whoever you want to be, depending on your beliefs and what you want to see. So examples of the state, of the traitor. When you put the traitor as the hero, you get propaganda such as the enemy is everywhere. Who in the church is a spy? Who of your friends? Who of your family? All violations against the state, the greater good, must be reported. The state cares about you, unlike those other people who are not the same as you. But good thing that can never happen here, right? We know who our heroes are, don't we? We haven't had a new one in about 200 years, but... So here's an example from the National Terrorism Advisory Bulletin. Kind of hard to read, but I'll read it. Through the remainder of 2021, racially or ethnically motivated violent extremists and anti-government, anti-authority violent extremists will remain a national threat priority for the United States. So what do they do here? It's beautiful. We've already done it once. Nobody caught on. Who is the enemy? Who did they just declare was the enemy? Think about it. It was beautiful. It was done in the 70s, probably for one of the first times on a major scale. No more is it America versus China, America versus Russia, America versus Vietnam. Now it was America declaring war on drugs. Then you can declare a war on terrorism. Well, what is drugs? Drugs can be anything we say is drugs, and we declare war on it. Who's a terrorist? Terrorist is whoever we say is a terrorist, and we can declare war on them now. So they just said they declare war on racially or ethnically or anti-government, anti-authority. What? What was the word they used? Extremists. The war on extremists. These extremists may seek to exploit the emergence of COVID-19 variants by viewing the potential reestablishment of public health restrictions across the United States as a rationale to conduct attacks. They will try to take the things the government are trying to force on you and use them against you to say that the government are the ones that are the tyrants for trying to make you do things. Pandemic-related stressors have contributed to increased societal strains and tensions, driving several plots by domestic violent extremists, and they may contribute to more violence this year. You've been warned of your national extremists, the war on them. Potential terrorist threats. Opposition to COVID measures. I don't want to stay in my house. Now I'm an extremist terrorist. The elections are probably rigged. I don't care about Trump at all, but, elections all over the place are kind of seeming pointless anymore. I guess I'm an extremist for thinking so. 9/11 anniversaries and religious holidays. Kind of snuck that one in there, didn't they? Like 4th of July. People wearing American flag shirts. Maybe you're an extremist. You just think it's a little extreme there? The war on extremism. Ahead of 9/11 anniversary. So what do you do about all these extremists and all these people going around? How do you know who's an extremist and who's not? Do you ask them? Who do you ask? Why not their neighbors? Why not their church members? Why not their family members? Why don't you get them to tell you who's the extremist and who's not? Your peers, right? So this comes from the 3rd Corps, American Armor Corps. This is the military. A peer survey question about risk. What poses a risk to you and your peers? When you sit down to take this survey, you get asked a set of questions. Which soldiers are most likely to get arrested within the next 3 months? Who do you think are the soldiers that are out there causing trouble? Which soldiers are most likely to get hurt during your personal recreational activity? Who's going to hurt themselves just messing around? Which soldier is the least responsible soldier off duty? Which soldiers are more likely to get into a fight with their spouse or girlfriend? Which soldiers are most likely to get into a fight? Who are the fighters amongst you? Which soldiers drink too much? Which soldiers are most likely to use illegal drugs? Goes on. Which soldiers have financial trouble? Which soldiers have recently gotten in trouble off duty and the chain of command does not know but should? Which soldiers have behavioral problems, are not seeking help and should seek help? Which soldiers are most likely to hurt themselves? And which soldiers outside of your platoon do you believe are at risk? So everybody takes this survey and they tell on their voice. They straight want you to snitch on everybody for all these different reasons. So they can categorize and so they can know who to watch. What if somebody came in this church and asked this set of questions to us? Hopefully everybody, I would be a smart aleck and just write my name under every one of them. That's exactly what I would do. If they tried that on me, that's right up the alley. That's exactly what I would do. Like, man, you got me all over it. If they don't say me, they're all lying. And I hope everybody else would do the same too. So this is long, I'm not going to read all of it, but this is coming from chaplains. Everybody know what a chaplain is? Yeah. It's like your spiritual leader in the military, but they've watered it down to where now the chaplain has to cover Judaism, Muslim, Hinduism, or whatever belief the person is. So this is kind of regarding the vaccination, and I'm not dogging on vaccination, this is just what it's getting at. So it's important to provide context in the memo discussing the member's belief. If they come to the meeting and begin by discussing concerns about safety, note that. But later, any comments made by the member that make it appear they're using the religious exemption as a ruse to avoid the vaccine is what they want to worry about. So have a member describe how they consistently keep the tenets of their faith and demonstrate those in their daily life. Ask them to be as specific as possible and put the specific acts or lack thereof in their memo. Ask whether the member is part of any particular religious faith. If yes, ask whether their religious leaders have spoken on this issue or taken a position one way or the other on the vaccine. But what does the Pope say about it? Well, the Pope said everybody should take it. Well, if the Pope says it, why are you, being a Christian, don't want to take it? Use their leaders against them. Ask whether the member attends services or whether or how they would gather with others to worship. If they indicate they worship with others, ask whether the member knows of individuals within the faith that have done it. If so, ask whether the member has discussed it with those individuals and determined how they came to the conclusion to take it. And if not, ask whether the member wants to be part of such conversations with other like members before they take it. So like, I don't want to, I got friends that did it, but not me. Well, if your friends did it, why won't you do it? Me and my friends said we're not going to do it. Would you like to talk to some friends who did do it first before you make your decision? Ask what makes this refusal such an important part of their religion or their religious beliefs. If the member starts to speak about safety, political, or ethical reasons or opposed to religious concerns, note that in the memo. Ask them how long they've been part of this religious faith. Goes on. If not a recent convert, ask whether they have received other vaccinations in the past. You took the flu shot, didn't you? Well, then why won't you take this one? You got vaccinated as a child, didn't you? You got vaccinated when you got in NDOC, didn't you? Yeah. So for those objecting based off fetal cells, and get this is my favorite part of it. Ask the member if they have done research on the fetal cell development. If yes, ask whether they understand that the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine was not manufactured in cell lines. The cell lines were only used in the testing of the vaccine after it was developed. Riddle me that one, Batman. So, they didn't use stem cells in creating it. They just used them to test it after it was created. So you created something, said it was effective, and you didn't even test it. Is that what you're telling me? Or you used it, didn't work, and you're using these to do what now? So now you're testing with it. I don't understand. So are the new ones that come out with it? Was it not just like that on the first couple hundred doses, or what? Confirm they understand that it will be administered. And if they say no, this is my other favorite part. And I was like, ugh, on this one. If seeking exemption based on the use of stem cells or fetal cells, ask whether the member has taken any other medicines that were developed and tested using fetal cells, to include Tylenol, Pepto-Bismol, aspirin, ibuprofen, Benadryl, or Claritin, because they all tested them on stem cells. Got us. It's like, dang. For those saying they were seeking exemption because quoting 1 Corinthians 6, 19 through 20, getting verse specific, ask what steps they take to ensure that other foreign substances aren't introduced into their body. For those members with visible tattoos, ask how that reconciles with your belief on Corinthians. You got tattoos, that goes against the very verse you're trying to use here to not do this. They take all their counterpoints and develop this to use against them. So what happens when the heroes that you grew up with, your swimmers, your cowboys, your zookeepers and farmers, betray you? Now we're talking about heroes not being betrayed, but betraying the people who called them heroes. Don't jump off that bridge. If you've seen Timmy jump off a bridge, it doesn't mean you should do it. If you've seen John jump off a bridge, you wouldn't do it, would you? Never say that to me again. None of you. Ever again. Ever. So heroes betray you. And it hurts. It really does hurt. But don't be afraid. This is not a message of despair. This is not a message of, oh, there's no hope left for us. This is not a matter of they're coming in for all directions. Because, of course, being Christian, we are under a certain hero who doesn't change. So when all this is caving in and all this is closing in and you feel like you're drowning, just look up, as always, because there is a way out. You have the hero who didn't come in and kill people with jawbones, who didn't, slay thousands of anybody, who didn't betray anybody. He just came and healed people, cast out demons, fed people, helped his boys fish on occasion, and sanctified people, cured them of what they had. Who was also betrayed by someone very close to him, like our other heroes, which is why the hero story is pretty much modeled off of this. Who did die, but was resurrected from all of it. And all you gotta do is just reach up and take it. So, living in a new society, in a Jesus state, do you have to tell on your brothers and sisters? Do you have to pressure your brothers and sisters? What would it be like to live in a Jesus state? The true hero, betrayed by even yet saved all, develops his own Jesus state. So what do you do to your brothers in this? If thy brother shall trespass against thee, go to him first. Don't tell Jesus, he said, or tell on him. And then if he don't hear you then take one or two. If he don't hear you then bring it up to everybody. One witness shall not rise up against any man for any iniquity or for any sin. And any sin that he sinneth, at the mouth of 2 witnesses or at the mouth of 3 shall the matter be established. Settle it amongst yourselves first. Accuse not a servant unto his master, lest he curse thee, and thou be found guilty. There's a generation that curses their father and do not bless their mother, like little Pavlik that we read about. He sure didn't do that. And there is a generation that are pure in their own eyes, and yet is not washed from their filthiness. So they think they're doing the right thing. They fall under the guise of they're trying to help everybody, and some of them might even believe they're helping everybody. The truth is, the way they're going about it leads down a dark path that has never worked, not once, since it's been tried. In Ephesians 5, for you were sometimes darkness, but now are you light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. Some people slipped up and just made a mistake. Don't have to judge them forever, all that. It's not really our place to do that anyway. Because sometimes, some of us, a lot of people say, if I lived in Nazi Germany, I sure wouldn't have turned to Nazi. Promise you would have. Promise every one of us in here would be Nazis if we lived in Germany, Nazi on that. This propaganda is very effective on a lot of people. But you gotta take that in. You gotta look at them and be like, I see what you did there. You got everybody like once or twice, but now we're a new generation. For the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness and righteousness and truth, proving what is acceptable unto the Lord, and have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them. Show how it works when you're not like them. For it is a shame even to speak of those things which are done of them in secret. But all things that are reproved are made manifest by the light, for whatsoever doth make manifest is light. So if you prove, hey, look, I didn't do what you did, and I'm perfectly fine. Everything's perfectly fine. That speaks for itself. You don't really have to say anything else about it. Wherefore he saith, awake thou that sleepest, and arise from the dead, and Christ shall give thee light. Christ shall give thee light. Awake thou that sleepest. So you don't have to worry about snitching or telling on your neighbor, because God's eyes are upon your neighbor. God's eyes are also upon you in all of this. So looking forward, taking into consideration everything we just went over, there are those that see when they're shown, and those that just do not see. That's it. That was the speed version of tonight's lesson.
Very good.
Fast as I can do it. All right.